Welcome to TradeNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 14th of May. Well, we're looking at the NQ right here to start with, because we had talked about this was kind of critical, that 50% line. They made a push back above and pressed back underneath it, but there was significant strength going on through the end of the day. We can see from a NASDAQ standpoint, these dips of red below zero tend to create a little push, and what this was mostly was short-term buyers starting to come back here in the pre-market, at least back above the 50%. From a daily standpoint, even stronger. We came to that 40-21 positive extreme fill. What was the actual? It was 29, well within that 80% number, which would have been much higher up here at the 30 plus range. So filling that one in and bouncing immediately right off of it and right back to the 76% above it. Of course, above resistance is the 4162 from an ABM level. And still, the shakeout pretty darn weak. Crossover here of the green above red in a falling setup, as well as the steel crossing. So you had midterm, long-term buyers, midterm and short-term buyers buying into it. Still not sure if the long-term setup is going to flip on that. A couple other catalysts that we can see from it would have been some of the sell-off, just short covering from what were pretty extreme speed of the dip. And that's where you get on shorts, where dramatic drop, bulls try to push back up, is what we talked about before. And whether they're able to continue to execute through it, that's really going to be the question. This is one of those buy the dip scenarios. And gold still going to maintain its highs. I think that we're just beginning to see the run of gold, as well as the euro still holding up and pushing through. It's nowhere to go because the U.S. wants that higher euro valuation. The question is where it will go. I had talked about the potential that, like in gold, sometimes you would get a sell-off in Bitcoin if it was being used to support purchases of additional stock. That was pretty dramatic fall, all the way down to the 46 range. So that was pretty significant, and that may have been enough resource to catapult markets back up as a sort of buy the dip. Of course, created a nice little double bottom setup within there. Still pretty weak as far as shakeout goes, and DOC with no DOC still reset. So how long it has remains to be seen, but nice bounce back off those extremes, and to make that double bottom, you can see the extreme histogram not making new dips below the red line, so it's filled in that scenario. Intraday, well, we're looking at where we're at post-market wise, and here's I wouldn't call it an anomaly because it's within the configurations where that cyan moves above. The green moves above cyan on DOC when we've had this dip of yellow going below blue, and in this case dipping to the negatives pretty strongly. But from the end of day, short setup kind of filled in quite a few positive extremes. There's so many of them to mark. The beginning of this run right here pretty much is what got filled back in the post-market. But if we go back earlier in the day, the day started out, we had a little run post-market. Didn't create too many positive extremes. These were all yellow from its original beginnings, which were right on the borderline. So kind of look for weakness when we get it, and expect that those are likely areas that are not as strong as the solid red, but still enough to capture our attention. In this case, took out those lows, which brought us back down to previous algo 4051. And then broke below it, and then we started to get this buildup. We did get right within this one, your blue moving above 10, at the same time, your dip of that yellow is right at the edge of it. A little bit different when we're in this incline mode versus having a dip from decline. So it's worth noting, particularly when we look at several of these. These are all where we begin to get dips of yellow below the blue and little failed pops within that setup, and each one of them taking place. This one a little bit less strength here because you'll notice it's happening above the 10 level. Though blue finally does dip below 10, and it becomes the kind of measuring stick to make sure that you're getting into that weakened category. But because it happened so much higher, we've noticed that we got even actually a little bit above the 50% from that move before, again, cascading right back to the 0 level. And then as we moved a little bit forward, you get this kind of a setup here where we dipped into the lows, and then again on this rising, we ended up with the dip coming down, not the same as when you're seeing it in the falling cascade. So worth noting those differentials just so that you can see it, because when this one came through, we didn't have it and the buy signal came in, and when it secondarily dipped, you still have magenta over yellow in this case, which is not uncommon on some of the other dips either, but the fact that the blue making no dip below 10, not to mention the fact you already had cyan falling below green on the DOC right there. So even a cautious person reading on that one, you still had clean, and it was right above that algo that it literally started to take off, and that was just a clean run all the way to the end, and that brought us all the way to where it was at the close. So again, some pretty solid volatility within the day, but signal-wise, kind of nice. Enjoying it. As always, though, I will continue to put up details on the Skype chat. Trade well, and we'll look for some more excitement.